If you're sitting in a jail or a prison, I have no doubt that you want to see yourself being successful. You want to see yourself not for the worst decisions that you've made in your life or the worst decisions that other people have made about you and put you in there. Instead, you want to see yourself becoming really successful. And that's why I'm so grateful to Eric. If you haven't seen part one of my video with Eric, I really encourage you to look at part one. It was filmed on April the 24th, 2021, and it'll say that on the date. It should be in your menu if you're watching this inside of a prison. But we really want you to watch that video, because what you will learn in that video is that Eric, at one point in his life, was homeless. He lived on the streets, and he had the real challenge and struggle of many people who are homeless. The difference is that Eric had a vision of becoming successful, and he made a commitment to figure out a way to transform his life from what society said he could become. Instead, he decided to focus on what he wanted to become. And that commitment influenced the way that he spoke. It influenced the people with whom he associated. It influenced the jobs he took. And if you watch part one of the video, you will learn about how he defined success. He needed to get a job, and he defined success every day. He had a goal of trying to earn $100. And that meant he worked in in what some people might call entry-level jobs. But he kept getting increasing levels of responsibility, hard, dirty, laborious work, including working in factories or a meat cutting place or a butcher shop. They were the hardest jobs, but he achieved his goal. And in that process of work, he built his self-esteem, his self-respect, his dignity. And eventually he got into the position of a restaurant. He tells us how his customers really noticed the work ethic, the care, the customer support, and they were so impressed by him that they offered him an opportunity to become a partner in a high-end restaurant in one of the best neighborhoods in America, the Upper East Side of New York. While he was there, he learned a lot more than being a waiter. He learned how to hire staff. He learned how to order supplies. He learned how to deliver an exceptional customer experience. And all of that resulted in the restaurant experience becoming so successful that another business bought the restaurant out, giving him a substantial exit. For the first time, putting cash in his pocket. He was able to then begin thinking, what am I going to do next? What is the next phase of his journey? And that led to his seeking out a mentor. The mentor guided him, helped him build a brand new business that's fundamentally different. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that capital equipment leasing company today. And we're going to talk about how he turned that into a far more successful venture that he leveraged to go into other places as well. And the reason that we want to share the story with you is because regardless of where you are right now, regardless of what decisions you've made in the past that may have hurt you, you can become something more. And the only limitation is your belief in yourself. I encourage you to be like Eric. Be the kind of guy that says, I'm going to be self-directed, I'm going to find my way, and you will achieve far more than what your case managers or probation officers or other people are telling you what you can become. You can become the CEO of your own life. So, Eric, thank you very much for being with us again. I mean, it's just so generous of you, of your time. We're here speaking on a Sunday morning at 6 o'clock, 6:24 in the morning in California. It's 9:24 in New York. I know that you've got a family that would love to have your time. You work all the time, but you're here with us. And I just want to thank you again for giving us your time and your wisdom and your experiences that we can share with people in jail and prison.
Michael, it's a pleasure to be back with you. When I sit here and I listen to you talk, I get so captivated. I could listen to you for hours and hours because I find inspiration in the words that you're choosing and how you put sentences together, because life is what we make it, but so is entrepreneurship, and the ability to go from one place to the next within your career is about your character. And fundamentally, how does that character play out? And what makes us so special and so valuable as people within organizations is our character. And we all have sordid pasts. We all have strengths and weaknesses, but it's how we bring those strengths, those weaknesses, and that character together to bring value to an organization. And so I can tell you, you mentioned a lot about hiring, and you mentioned a lot about what it's like to work with consumers and businesses. And fundamentally, really, all it boils down to is understanding what the other party needs and being honest about who you are as a person. Now, that doesn't mean sharing your life story. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I packaged mine up and compartmentalized it so that I could survive. But it does mean being a person who is related, that people can relate to, so that you're relatable, having a sense of humor, really genuinely accepting what you don't know. And that is really the first part of becoming a successful contributor to any business at any level, right? So in all of my positions across the last 35 years, they were all first-time positions. I had to learn from ground up. It's not as if you walked in and you knew exactly what to do. And it doesn't matter whether you were at a retail food chain, or you were collecting carts at a grocery store, or you're becoming an administrative assistant in a business. Everybody has a first day. Everybody has a second day. And the point of those first, second, third, and continuing for an extended period of time is so that you can learn that job. So I want your viewers today to know that while they may not have specific job experience, if they're ready, willing, and able, and are interested in fulfilling their own life's dreams, they just have to put the effort in. And everything boils down to the effort and appreciating the opportunity that's before you.
Well, you're really helpful to us because of that really unusual background of having been homeless and then having become successful on an 8-figure level, in excess of $10 million in businesses that are extraordinarily successful. That gives hope. And when somebody has hope, when they say, well, if that person was homeless and that person doesn't have a university degree and that person doesn't have a traditional background, but he built this pathway to success, maybe I can as well. And that would have been a real forceful and powerful message when I was in prison, to listen and learn. And you emphasize the importance, as we do in our course, the importance of developing communication skills and developing critical thinking skills. And just so you know, in addition to the video, what we do is we create a lesson plan that reveals what I learned from listening to you and what I would have been asking if I was lying inside of a prison. Because the truth, as I found it, is that I was in prison, for 26 years. And while I was in prison for 26 years, the opportunities I created, anybody could have created. Anybody could have persuaded universities to admit them and get into universities. Anybody could have raised money, built businesses, built a huge support network, created job opportunities. Anybody could have done that, but they just didn't see ask the same questions. You asked questions that changed your life when you were in a difficult situation, and our audience can learn from you. So I'm going to ask you some very specific questions that would have been really helpful to me, with hopes that it helps our audience. And
Great.
One of those questions is, yesterday in the earlier video, you spoke about the importance of communications and critical thinking skills. Well, in what ways do those skills relate to two different, what we would call out here in business, two different verticals, including the business to consumer market, right? When you're working in a restaurant, you're dealing with people that come and they just want to have a 5-star meal. Okay. That's one level of communication. And you're dealing in the other businesses that you built, it struck me as being more business to business. You're helping businesses develop the tools they need to grow their business. In what ways is the communication skill, in what ways does your approach differ, or do they not differ?
That's a very nuanced question, but you raise a lot of good points. You mentioned some key things. I just want to touch on all of them, Michael, because I think they're all really important. I would like to just take the one aspect of what you said and drill in on a little bit, and then I'm going to answer your question, because I think fundamentally it's important for your listeners to realize that not everybody has a university degree, and not everybody is meant to go through university. That doesn't mean that their path should be less successful. And so success, I think, every day needs to be defined as, are you feeling good about yourself? Did you do the right thing? Are you feeling healthy? Are you cultivating nice relationships? Are you improving your language and your grammar? Self-improvement, step one, right? And universities today don't teach you everything you need about any one job. They don't teach you about business to consumer or business to business characteristics of a person. They teach you about case studies and how those businesses resulted. That doesn't necessarily help you to understand how to talk and how to communicate. And so there are plenty of great books and videos to learn how to improve one's social presence. And just some very basic things on that right now, Michael, for your viewers. Obviously, speaking slow enough, speaking clear enough, using words that your counterparty can relate to, that are of the same subject matter, is really important. And then, of course, being honest. And so we fundamentally look at, candidates for employment based on who they are, not just what they've done, because there are plenty of candidates who've gone through a tremendous amount of university who aren't right for every job because they don't have the same tenacity, or they don't have the same character development, or they don't have the patience to deal with a consumer. So there is a blend of what we look for in the character of a person and what motivates them, and how we believe we can help train them to become the best person within our organization. So business to consumer tends to be a bit more emotional. So if you're a person who is sensitive to how consumers feel, are they happy? Are they feeling like they've gotten value? Are they the type of person that's going to come back to your business? All of those things matter to the entrepreneur who owns that small business. And so if you're the type of person that can be sensitive to a consumer's needs, then that's a great area for you to focus on. I found that business to consumer was very rewarding because it enabled you to build long-standing relationships with people on a personal level. Whereas business to business is fundamentally very different. Right? There are great expectations on how you communicate, when you communicate, being responsive. And so when I say responsive and how you communicate, what I'm talking about is they asked you a question, you have to answer it. They have something that they need, you have to fulfill it. They want a better price, you have to understand why they need that price. You have to figure out what really is motivating their decisions and think about other extenuating circumstances that might be driving their train of thought, not just what they're saying. Because in business, from business to business, nobody really says exactly what they want. They say what they think they want you to hear, so that they are attempting to get the best opportunity. And so a lot of times transactions don't happen in business to business because the party fulfilling the need or the service isn't able to understand the back channel of what motivates that business. And so understanding that is super important. And I think the best way to do it, Michael, is to point blank ask the questions. You have to ask for the order, you have to ask for the relationship, you have to ask for the opportunity, and not assume that those things are going to come to you because you have the product. Having the product is only part and parcel, but also the person has to trust and believe in you. And those are character developments that I recommend everybody develop. And that fundamentally comes down to understanding exactly what that business does. So business to consumer might be a great place for people to begin their careers because it's less focused on the product and more focused on the interaction.
And that's you used the term transaction, and I think it's important for people to remember that term, transaction. Every time we're doing something, we're doing business, we're creating a transaction. Hopefully we're giving something of value to somebody else, and that person is providing something of value to us. There's a great a motivational speaker from the sales sector. His name is Zig Ziglar. And he used to say, if you can help someone else get everything they want, you can get everything you want. And that is all about providing good transactions and helping people to know you, like you, and trust you. And to the extent that you build a background or a backstory, you can overcome anything, even a background that would have included 26 years in federal prison. Ask me how I know, but Eric, you've overcome that as well. And in my case, I used to have a vision of these transactional experiences before they came in the commercial sector. I mean, you still have to do it while you're in jail or prison. You've got to interact with a case manager. You're going to have to persuade a probation officer to give you a higher level of liberty. You're going to have to really always be conducting transactions and selling yourself. And the stronger your communication skills are, the better off you are going to be. The question I have for you concerns these backgrounds, because a lot of times people in jail or prison, they're a little bit worried. Do I reveal my background, that I was convicted of a crime and I served time in prison and I've got a criminal background, or do they try to hide it? What strategy worked for you, given that you have a background of being, as you said yesterday, on the streets? Does that ever come up? Yeah, and how do you deal with it?
Well, it's interesting because it's very much a part of the fabric of who I am today. And so I would say that I can sum this up beautifully for you in a few sentences that are going to describe my denial to acceptance. And so over the years, I have found a way to compartmentalize my challenges, as many of us do, right? We have to find a way to survive every day, and we can't let our emotions or things that happen in the past dominate every aspect of our life. We have to find fulfillment separate from them. And that's why, there are different phases of our lives, right? There's, the opportunity to learn. There's the opportunity to excel. There's the period in which your life that you're really motivated and hungry and you want to work. But all throughout these different phases, we're dealing with denial. And denial can be very dangerous. Denial that you've had a problem in the past, or denial that your life, wasn't exactly the way you wanted it. And to be honest, I think people who have great lives that we aspire to have also probably feel the same way. In many ways, they feel like, oh, I want something different. But what I mean by denial is that we take those feelings, we take those emotions, and we deny that they're real, and we put them in a box so that we can survive in other areas, so that we can excel in building a relationship together like what you and I are doing today. And I would say now that I'm 50, I've stopped denying. I have really found a way to accept who I am and my life, and willing to share that, including my flaws, because I genuinely want to have relationships. And so my advice here is that packaging yourself up so that you look the best. I mean, I could sit here and tell you to put a suit and tie on and pretend, but I would rather tell you to do something that I've learned from experience, or at least share that with you as a recommendation, which is people like to get to know you. And I would say that I've created this image of myself, some of which you've described, that isn't absolutely truthful. So I've had to maintain that my entire life, which is that everything looked perfect, that I probably came from the perfect house with the perfect parents and the perfect upbringing, because I wanted people to have more confidence in me. And I thought that helped me to fit in. And in reality, people didn't have confidence in me because of my parents. They didn't have confidence in me because of whether I was homeless or not, or, whether I had run the red light or not. They had confidence because of the relationship I built directly with them. So every opportunity you have to meet someone and to have a conversation is an opportunity to build a relationship, but also to learn. So your character and who you are is reflective of the people that you interact with. So every time you meet someone, figure out what you want to learn from them. And what I would go back to related to denial, and I'm sorry to bounce around, is that at age 50, I've realized that I wish I had told more people about my life's experience during my journeys. Because while I know lots of people, I don't think they know me. And I don't think that they understand the type of person that I genuinely am, as opposed to the type of person I packaged up to create for them. And so finding that right balance of, okay, I can be professional, but I also need to be myself, which is useful because I think people really today are focused on genuine relationships, not just what you can put on paper, but how you interact, how you share.
As a person in your career, let me ask it to you this way first. And this is just a simple answer, but obviously not an exact precise answer, but in a range. How many jobs would you say you've created over the course of your career?
Well, looking back,
in all industries, restaurant industry, building a big leasing company, real estate businesses, how many jobs? Just like more than 20, more than 50, more than 100? What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say cumulatively over the last 25 years, I've probably employed or subcontracted out more than 2,500 people.
Okay, so hundreds and hundreds of people.
Hundreds
What advice would you give to a person who's in jail or prison, and they're coming to you and looking for employment? Do they reveal their background and what they've learned from the experience and say, this is who I am and this is why I bring value? Or are they better off trying to hide it?
Well, I think that that's a very good question because it goes to the heart of what I just explained to you about denial, right? Look, I think when you're building a new relationship, it's better to be honest, right? Doors may close because people are naive, or doors may close because people aren't willing to take those types of chances. But it boils down to you having your story succinctly prepared. And so I learned a long time ago, there's this term everyone might be familiar with, which is the elevator pitch. And my elevator pitch is not about the business. It's not about asking for the business. It's about within 60 seconds being able to summarize who you are and what your strengths and values are. So as opposed to selling something, convincing something, I believe that your elevator pitch should fundamentally be about who you are and why they should work with you, what you bring to the table, the way that you think about things, sharing that you're willing to think critically about ideas, and sharing that you're willing to be open and honest, sharing that you are a family person or not a family person, and sharing that your life actually in the past wasn't perfect, that you've made mistakes and that those mistakes have been that you've paid the price for those mistakes. You've given back to society. You've learned a very hard lesson. And that has developed a grit within you and a strength within you, and that you can now be the hardest worker or the most successful person within the organization because you've come from here and you need to be here. People who are hungry are what companies need. People who are satisfied is not what companies need. So within that 60 seconds, you get your story down and you're honest and you leave all the denial out. But don't focus on what you did that was wrong. Highlight that there are sections of your life that you're not proud of and that you have remorse for, and that you've paid the price, and that if you want to talk more about it, I'm willing to talk more about it. But here are my strengths today. I am ready, willing, and able. I'm a critical thinker. I understand what your needs are. I'm here before you because I need something, but I also am willing to give you something. I'm willing to give you a commitment to work hard, a commitment to show up on time, a commitment to be part of your team, a commitment to try every day and to start over every day anew. And that, to me, is more powerful than sitting and looking at a resume that says, oh, I went to this school, this school, this school. I don't know anything about that person. All I know is that they picked a good font on a piece of paper and that they look good in front of me because they brushed their teeth that day. but they haven't told me anything about themselves. And then unfortunately, it's up to the interviewer to ask the substantive questions to get into the meat and potatoes of who that person is. So I think before that happens, you share in your first 60-second preamble a quick snapshot of who you are in 4 different categories. And you should focus on it and prepare. And when you're in the shower and when you're driving or when you're eating, you're rehearsing it, because it is your life, it is your story, and you should be able to say it with ease off the top of your tongue and with confidence and in less than 60 seconds.
And you just heard a great lesson from somebody who's created more than 2,000 jobs over the course of his career. He's employed people, he's groomed people for leadership, but he's done it himself. It's kind of that same message that we try to share, is that we never ask anybody to do anything that we didn't do or that we're not still doing. We're trying to give you a pathway to success. And if you're listening to this message in jail or prison and you're hearing that really toxic message that tells you the best way to serve time is to forget about the world outside, my advice is reject that information and focus on what Eric just told us. And that's be thinking about your future, be thinking about how you can communicate the value that you can provide to somebody else. You will significantly accelerate prospects for your success if you embrace that concept, and you can start thinking about it right now. Could we get into some more practical or specific advice here, or a story rather, Eric, about this business that you built in capital leasing? We have about another 30 minutes or so in our time together today. And during that time, I'd really like to hear about how big you were able to build it after that capital leasing company, after you had that meeting with the mentor, and he gave you that really prudent advice of going into a meeting with confidence and knowing that I have $100 in my pocket. I don't need this deal. I'm going to bring more value to the customer and make the customer want to, I'm not selling, I'm going to make the customer want to buy. And if you can change that mindset, you empower yourself. How big did you build that business, and what were some of the bigger deals that you remember putting together?
Sure. Well, I think that's one of my greatest successes, is the business that I built within National Leasing, because National Leasing required capital that needed to come from institutions in order to provide leasing. It also required a need from companies to be able to utilize the assets that they wanted to lease, and it required a supplier. And I brought them all together. I created something that we called a design build concept, Michael. And basically, I didn't go to school to create this concept. I basically realized that there was a need in the market. And I went from leasing $1,000 phone systems and $1,500 copier machines to realizing that people who bought copiers and phones also needed furniture, and they also needed architectural and design services to build out their offices. So first off, let me explain to you what a lease is. A lease is when a product is made available to a business that they can use, right? So it's the use of that product that is important to the company, not its ownership. So owning the asset doesn't make them money. Using the asset makes them money. So what happens is a company like mine would actually go in and provide the capital for the manufacturer. So for example, if you were buying a copier, we would put up the capital for that copier so that your business, Michael, could use the copier, right? So that you could use it for the next 3 years. You would pay me a monthly fee, which is a lease payment. And as a result, I would earn income on that lease, which was greater than what we basically borrowed that money for. And what was wonderful about that, and what created the value, and what's amazing about this, Michael, is when I started this business, I never expected that was going to be the outcome, which I'm going to share with you now. By being the lessor, the company that actually provided the financing, meaning that we own the copier that you're using, we got the benefit from what's known as depreciation. the ability to write off a certain amount of value associated with that product each year would offset our revenue taxation. And so ultimately, it made it a very profitable business for us as lessor because we owned the asset and we were able to depreciate it. So what I realized is that all three parties, these constituents that needed to come together in order to bring value, it was important for them to work together. So I created this design build concept. So what I did is I went out to companies like Dell Computers and Compaq Computers when they were out. We went out to Steelcase and Herman Miller and Knoll and many of the furniture manufacturers that make what's called contract office furniture. We also went out to the companies that make phone systems like AT&T. And what we said is we can provide financing to your customers so that they can buy your $1,000 or $5,000 or $20,000 phone system, but pay for it as they realize value over time. So we would put up the capital and they would then be able to make the sale, and the consumer would have access to the product and be able to pay for it over time. So we did that. I did that basically from scratch. I started that on November 25th, 1995. I was 25 years old, had no experience in doing it. And you think, well, how do you start off? Like, how do you decide you want to get into the leasing business? And basically, I realized that there was a need. I bought a sound wave device that was basically a radio that had like a CD player and a Super Bose speakers, and it was like $600, and they offered me financing for it. And so I paid $49 a month for a period of time, and I got the benefit of enjoying it and using it. And I thought, there's got to be lots of people who want to be able to do the same thing for phone systems and for other devices. And so that's really where the impetus of the idea came together. Over time, I added in and layered in phones and copiers and contract office furniture. And then ultimately we added in construction costs to build out a new office and architectural fees and design fees. And so we became known as the leasing company that would finance your design build out of your brand new office. So if you had a 10,000 square foot office and we provided your phones, your copiers, your technology, we paid for your contractor to build it, we paid for your architectural fees. And instead of you writing a check for $1 million, you would basically write a check for X number of dollars every month for the next 60 months and pay for that cost over time. You'd amortize it, if you will. And as a result, we enhanced the sales at the computer companies. We enhanced the sales at the furniture manufacturing companies. We enhanced the leasing opportunities for building owners in Manhattan. We enhanced the opportunities for the consumer or the business that was leasing our products. And it became an enormous value proposition for everyone involved, including us. So it was win-win, right? The end user, Michael Santos Enterprises, was benefiting because it had the products and it could do its private business, and we benefited because we generated income off of leasing those products. That business grew to the point in which we had multiple $100 million credit lines and credit facilities to be able to lend out that money to those companies. And so ultimately, I sold that business and exited it as a result of selling something that is so unique. I didn't realize that I was building this value when I started the company. I realized I was going to make money between what I borrowed from and what I leased for, right? The margin, the 1 or 2% every transaction. But ultimately, because we owned those assets, we were getting the depreciation. So that depreciation value grew and grew and grew and grew, almost like another asset. And so ultimately, what we ended up doing is I sold the entire business for its depreciation value, not for its market value or not for its sales volume or not for its cash flow, but for this other asset that when I started, I didn't even know what depreciation was. It wasn't even on my radar. And I only learned about it, a few years later, and it wasn't a target for me. It was like, we weren't working toward building a depreciation value. We were working toward providing value for our customers. We wanted to enable them to grow. We provided financing for small doctors' offices, and we provided financing for big construction companies and large trading platforms. So it really ran the gamut. And I loved meeting all those entrepreneurs, and I loved learning about all their exciting businesses. And in doing that, I learned how to communicate a lot better, right? I learned like from crazy wild people that were, stockbrokers, and then I learned from people who were, thoughtful doctors, because they, all these people need tools, and they all needed financing. And so the depreciation value is what I ultimately sold that business for. And it was a very rewarding and successful transaction. But yet, once again, I found myself nearly 6 years later, after starting the business, with a sum of capital and nothing to do. Like, my entire skill set was in that business. My identity had been wrapped into it. Once again, this time I wasn't a restaurateur. This time I was the CEO of a leasing company. What was I going to do next? And so I'm just turning 31 about this point in time. Still living on the Upper East Side, and not living in a much bigger apartment. This time it was a 1-bedroom, and I lived on 84th and East End, and I loved it. I commuted down to work onto Wall Street every day. And, I found myself in need of coming up with another business. And so here we are at age 31.
The leasing business sounds fascinating. And I mean, I could probably do 10 lessons just on that concept of learning about depreciation and creating an intangible asset value. That is really exciting to me as somebody as an entrepreneur and is always looking to create value. Question on that front, though. What level of defaults did you have, extending credit and then finding people that didn't pay, and how did you cope with that? I mean, you're to go and repossess a copy machine that may or may not be there after you've leased it to somebody, or it may or may not work. You still are carrying the debt on it. How did that prove to be a problem for you? Or obviously it didn't prove to be a problem for you. How did you overcome that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways that every company handles it differently. I actually took a very different approach. If there were defaults in our portfolio, I wanted to understand why there were defaults. I didn't look at them as a number or a statistic that we had to find a business solution for. I was providing financing for people and for companies that needed an asset. So if you were making your payment on your copier, it wasn't because of the copier, and it wasn't because of our business. Something was going on within your business that we wanted to find out more about. And so what I did is I would pick up the phone, not as a collection call, but I would speak to the head of the company. In many cases, I would get on the phone with the CEO. And most of the companies that we provided financing for, the CEO was the majority owner. And I would say to them, this is, Eric from National Leasing. This is not a collection call. We've enjoyed a wonderful relationship with you for many, many years. Can you help us understand what's changed, and how can we be of value to you in this transformation that's taking place within your organization? And I didn't make them feel bad about the situation. I didn't ever get upset with them. What I did was want to understand what was changing. And I learned so much from those calls. And usually when I hung up from those calls, Michael, I had a new friend, because I could understand what was happening to them, and I could relate to the challenges they were having, because they were being open and honest. So those conversations sometimes would go like, well, we've outgrown the product and we're looking for new ones. Okay, great. Let us help you with that. Let us fold in the existing relationship into a new one. Or the business is actually not going as well as we had anticipated, and we're trying to restructure everything and we don't know what to do. Okay, that's a perfect opportunity, because you know what? There's another company out there just like yours that probably needs that equipment. If you turn that equipment back over to us and give us possession of it and allow us to give it to another company and release it, or give them the opportunity to grow their business, we'll let you out of your lease and we won't pursue that anymore, which is not something that companies do today, right? The CEO of a leasing company doesn't call you up and say, oh, you're having a hard time? Okay, well, we'll find another use for your product somewhere else, so that another business can grow, and then we'll take some pressure off of you so you can reorganize and hopefully one day come back to us. That doesn't happen today. And I did that. I personally got involved with every set of circumstances that was what we called a shift in business, not a default. So Other opportunities when I would call were so interesting. I would get on the phone, start talking to a person. I remember a couple times, I ended up having lunch with some CEOs that were looking to sell their company. So, and this happened a lot. Anytime there was a sale going on, they would always stop making the payments on leased equipment because it keeps cash in the business. It makes the business look more valuable because at the time I was providing lease financing, Michael, it was considered an off the balance sheet transaction. So what that means is that you can have a $5,000 a month lease payment for your furniture and your phones and your computers, but it used to be deemed rent. So it wasn't on your balance sheet as a liability. Today it is, but when I would call up the CEO, I would ask them, what's going on? And they said, well, we're in the middle of a merger. We're thinking about, doing a deal, or we're thinking about selling our company. I said, okay, great. Why don't we put your payments in abeyance for 12 months? We will let them accrue, and then we will re-amortize your lease for the remaining 24 months. We'll take those 12 monthly payments that you didn't make or that you're not going to make so that you can sell your business, and then we'll put them into a larger payment in the last 24 months. And they were like, oh, that's amazing. That's very helpful. That was very meaningful to their business. And it was good for us because now we no longer had a default. They were still able to use the equipment to sell their company. And it was a win-win, right? It's just thinking about how both parties can come together and find a solution. And the only way you can do that is by talking, by picking up the phone or by sitting in front of someone, understanding what their needs are and tweaking things just to make it perfect for them.
And what we just got was an exceptional lesson on the importance of developing communication skills and critical thinking skills and using those two assets, those personal assets that any of us can develop to create opportunities or solutions out of somebody else's problems. When we can help solve somebody else's problems, we create enormous value. And if you can do that, nobody is going to care if you serve time in prison or jail or not. If you can help people solve their problems, you can achieve an extraordinarily high level of success, as Eric described for us, creating a business with hundreds of millions of dollars in value. You've got to be thinking not about getting a $15 an hour job, not about getting, credit to buy a new Camaro. You've got to be thinking about, how am I going to build a sustainable life? And we're going to hear that in the next chapter of Eric's really impressive career when he transitioned into the real estate space. And Eric, I know that there is a huge business right now really the whole hospitality industry has been disrupted by companies like Airbnb and these other companies that lease out property on a daily basis, just personal residences. Rather than signing 5-year leases or 1-year leases, people are renting properties for a day. And I know you went into the property leasing business. Could you tell us a little bit about how the economics of that industry worked for you?
Sure, absolutely. I would love to do that. I had a follow-up thought on something that you said, Michael, which I really resonated positively with me, which is that, an individual's barrier to entry is primarily psychological. It is your own limitations that you're imposing upon yourself. So just as a follow-up reminder, having your personal narrative down into a 60-second elevator conversation where you summarize your value and your strengths, anyone that has the ability to communicate like that in 60 seconds is valuable to a company. And it doesn't matter what that company does, whether they sell restaurant supplies over the phone or they have customer support at Verizon. Getting that story about your life down to a point in which you are convincing another person to subscribe in your best interest is going to be really, really important. And one final thought on that, Michael, and apologize, I didn't answer your question yet, and I'm going to do that. But there are some social stigmas associated with people who have been previously incarcerated. And those social stigmas are because people don't understand what it means to be incarcerated. And if you have been and you are trying to get a job, I think it's best that you explain that to the CEO or the person interviewing you, that that is part of the fabric of your character, and that is why you're here for this job, because you have the passion, the need, and are willing to do what needs to get done. And no one in an interview says that. No one, everyone in an interview says, well, I think I'm the right person for the job. No one says, I need the job and I want the job and I won't let you down. And I would encourage you to be honest and to say exactly where you're coming from, because people who want jobs are very different to hire than people who need jobs. I want a car. I want lunch. I want a job. No. I need a job because I need to eat. I need to put a roof over my house. I want to rebuild my life. I want to build relationships. I want to work here because I'm excited by this company. I need to be part of an organization like this because I know that I will help it grow. So having and distinguishing the difference between wanting and needing, I think, is going to be really important for today's listeners. But let me get to your question, which is, I think, just as equally as important. So, Michael, you asked me a couple of key questions about the profitability of businesses and how I transitioned into property management. And I kind of transitioned into property management because I didn't know, again, what I really wanted to do. I realized that I was sort of starting to dabble in real estate. I wanted to think about real estate as another career, but I didn't know anything about it. So I said, well, how can I learn the most about the behind the scenes of real estate is to manage property. And so in 2001, shortly after 9/11, I started a company called Malley Management. We had never managed property before. And so what we basically did is, it was myself, it was a pure startup. We rented a very small, tiny office in a shared office space. I didn't know if this was going to be a new career. And so I had to figure out how we were going to make money. What does property management mean? I had no prior experience in it. So again, no college degree taught me how to do property management. And so immediately what I did is I went out and I started talking to real estate brokers. Real estate brokers are everywhere, in every city. So in New York, I would make an appointment. I would go look at a property with a real estate broker and I would explain to them that I've started a management company. Do they need any special services for their properties? And they would immediately say, well, yes, I need to organize the housekeeping for this property. I need to organize, getting it painted. I have people who are coming to look at it. I need people to show it. There's plumbing repairs and I need to find a plumber. And I said, wow, this is property management. If I could make a small margin off of every invoice of all the things that person just summarized that they're not willing to do, I could make a very comfortable living and build yet another business. And that's exactly what we did. So over the course of 6 months, we realized that in property management, you need to know a lot about a property and you need to be able to have resources to fix, repair. And I didn't start it with a lot of capital. Now I had capital, right? I wasn't as hungry, but I was as motivated because I wanted to create something. I wanted to do something new. No resting on your laurels, right? And so I realized that if I had 100 apartments that we managed, we would be earning a small fee for every transaction that we did for all of those people, which brought value to them, value to their property, and helped them achieve a goal. So we didn't earn a lot of money off of any one transaction, but we earned a cumulative amount of money off of all of our transactions, which brought value to the end user. And for us, it built a business, right? So we then packaged up our property management services and said, well, if we manage your property for you, we will do all of these things for a fixed management fee. So if you collect $500 a month in rent, we will take 2 or 3 or 4% of that as a fee to us to deal with all of the administrative aspects of that business. And then it stopped becoming about individual transactions, which a lot of people realized they didn't like as much, but more about the peace of mind of knowing that someone was there to take care of it. So we created kind of an insurance concept, Michael, which is people pay for insurance every year for the psychological benefit of knowing that they have protection over the asset that they're insuring, right? Peace of mind. So what we did is we built a brand around our property management company about peace of mind. Owning property is not as hard as you might think. And where this is us communicating to the property owner when you have a property manager that takes care of everything for you. And so it started by, taking 10% on a housekeeper's, cleaning bill, right? $10. Then it grew to finding a plumber who came in and changed out the sink, and we earned 3 or 4% off of that. And then we just found value in working with real estate brokers in New York City. And, there's 14,000 real estate brokers in New York City, certainly no shortage of them. And some are great and some, not as successful because they don't have the business. But what we did is we marketed directly to the real estate brokers. They want the big, cushy real estate transactions that are 3 and 4% of $1 million transaction. They don't want to be dealing with this little, these little property management things. And so I saw value in doing thousands of transactions a year and earning just a little smidgen of each one of them. And what that did for me, what was so amazing about that, Michael, is it brought peace of mind to the real estate broker and to the property owner because they had a person like me now managing their properties. But what that did for me is it diversified my income, right? You think, oh, well, now he's in the property management business. Well, actually, no, I was diversifying my income across hundreds of different contractors, right? So it wasn't just about the property management business. We were earning a small amount across every type of transaction that you can think of. So we all of a sudden went into hospitality, housekeeping, plumbing, electric, all of these different services we had to learn about and understand what these licensed individuals who were doing those services needed to do. And we helped facilitate it, right? We would book their appointment. We would grant them access to the property. We would make sure that they cleaned up afterward. We would handle their billing and collection. We would pay them. So we did a lot of work to support those businesses and understand what their needs were. But at the same time, we all of a sudden diversified our revenue streams across dozens and dozens of industries, which you could never imagine doing. And it started by just arranging a housekeeper for someone as just a very basic transaction.
So there's just so much value in what Eric just provided to us, and that is helping us understand we're as entrepreneurs, as human beings, our job is to help other people, make other people's lives easier. And it's not about making a fortune off of a single transaction, but rather creating an enterprise that, as he said, you can make a great business making 2 or 3% off of the cumulative transactions. And the beauty of this, all you really need to build a business like this are strong communication skills and strong critical thinking skills. And if you build a business that's going to solve problems for other people, guess what? Nobody is going to ask how much time you served in prison. They want to know, can you help me solve this problem? My problem is I own an asset. I want to spend my time doing something else. I don't want to figure out who's mowing the lawn. So your job is to figure out, how do I create systems that can help me manage properties at scale? And now you don't have to go out and accumulate tens of millions. 100 properties, if each property is worth, just say $500,000, you're talking about a $50 million portfolio. But nobody's asking you to create that. All they're asking you to create is get a computer, get a spreadsheet, learn how to use your math skills, you learn how to use your English skills, learn how to use your organizational skills, and you can build a phenomenal business. That's really the takeaway I got from Eric. And it's the reason that I would have been going through these lesson plans that accompany these interviews and saying, I've got to learn to communicate like Eric, because then I am not going to go from one prison to another prison of trying to find a job. Create your own job. Eric, we've come to the end of this, of our time together, because I have to abide by the prison's 1 hour rules of these lesson plans, but I'm going to leave the last part of our interview to you. Maybe you've just done so much with your life, and you're such a model of excellence when it comes to overcoming struggle and becoming extraordinarily successful. And that's why I asked you to spend time with our audience, and we're so grateful to you for not only giving us your 2 days on a valuable weekend. I know how valuable time is to you, but also in helping us actually create the lesson plans. Let me give you the last word of what you might want to communicate to people who are somewhat similar to those homeless people that you knew when you were, as you said, on the streets. What advice do you offer them with regard to what they can do to make their life different in 5 years and in 10 years than it is today?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think the sky is the limit for anybody who's watching this video. And I know that you say, well, that's easy for me to say given where I am, but I wasn't always in this position. And, you know, what we didn't say when I started the property management business is that I started it with basically no money, right? I had money, but I didn't put any of it in the business. I started it by a shared office space that was as big as a cubicle with no capital infrastructure. And I let the business grow, as opposed to pumping lots of money in and then feeling cushy and important in your fancy office. I didn't do that. And I didn't do that with the leasing business either. I ran it out of my studio apartment for the first year. I didn't use any of the money that I had previously made in the previous business. And so what I'm saying is that if you have a passion for something or a desire to do something, you can figure out how to do it on your own. And there is two big lessons that I would like to just impart. And one is, we touched on it yesterday, and it's really important. The failure story that is playing over and over in your head isn't the total sum of who you are. The total sum of who you are is yet to be seen. What you do with your life next is going to be really important, because it can be the beginning of a beautiful future for you. What you have gone through needs to be maintained in a comfortable, healthy place within your brain and not lived on your shoulder. And you can succeed in knowing that your failure story is your own, but you need to share it in a way that allows people to be comfortable with the fact that you were incarcerated. Denying it happened is not going to be useful for you. Denying it happened is not going to be useful for the person who wants to work with you or employ you. If you have developed the talent and the skills that Michael talks about, your critical thinking, your math skills, your vocabulary, there is an opportunity for you. Every door is not going to open, but many doors will open. All you have to do is have the perseverance and the desire to want to do something to improve your life. Small steps every day, specific and measurable goals. I'm going to say that again, specific and measurable goals. When I set out, my goal was to make $100 a day so that I could survive. It was specific, it was measurable, and I didn't go to sleep until I did it. So that meant I had to have 2 or 3 jobs. That was completely fine. Sleeping wasn't part of the specific and measurable goals. When I got to the $100, that's when I thought about how can I make $101? And that will happen the same for you. So start out with what you believe is going to be the right, specific, and measurable goals. Set them and adhere to them. You have to be your own boss in this journey. And I'm telling you, doors will open if you're honest with yourself and you're honest with your either partners, employers, or the people that you choose to work with.
That is just such great advice, Eric. And I really want to thank you for being a part of the Prison Professors community. You are now a prison professor, and you've got a class of more than 100,000 people in jails and prisons across America. Our goal is that those people take action, really work on developing their communication skills, developing their critical thinking skills, and preparing for the success that they are destined to become if they just follow these principles. We'll be back soon with another inspiring guest. Thank you.